Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be part of this Women on Stage event. What a cool conference. So I am here to talk to you all about how to grow female talent in cybersecurity. And I thought I would start off with talking about how I found cybersecurity. When I was in high school, yes, I graduated high school in 1997. I might be old, and that's fine. I really liked math a lot, and I would pride myself on getting better grades than the boys. And so I went to my career counselor and I said, what can I do? I love mathematics. What can I do as a job? And he said, oh, obviously you could be a math teacher. So I was thinking oh, okay, maybe I could. But in hindsight, is that what he was advising the guys to do? No, it wasn't. They were told to be engineers or other such things. But I was naive and I didn't really know. So I went to the University of Lethbridge, who has this amazing program where in 5 years you get 2 degrees, your bachelor's degree and a teaching degree. And so I went there. But they start off with having you in the class within your first 2 years of university to see if you are, you like it, you can try it out kind of. And what I realized was that I did not enjoy being in the classroom. I think I loved math more than I loved the children. And I thought to myself that to be a good math teacher, you probably need to love the children more than the mathematics. And so I decided, well, I don't think I'm going to do that. And dropped that part of the degree program and continued in mathematics. And so in my 3rd year, I took my first computing course. It was a required course. My friends had told me that it was hard. They were in humanities. And when I sat there in that class, because I had put it off because my friends told me that it was hard, I realized that computer science was just another syntax for how I already thought as a mathematician. And I was so excited about having a practical application to the way I thought, how to problem solve. And I got very excited about computer science. And I thought, okay, well, how am I going to find a job after university? I might as well join the co-op program. And one of the postings that came up was that they were looking for a mathematician who knew how to code. And I was like, yes, that's me, please, pick me. And the CSE, the Canadian Security Establishment group, they did accept me. So the CSE is equivalent to NSA in the United States. I got to work on some cool stuff. One was to figure out how secure Bluetooth is as a encryption algorithm. It's not, but apparently has very practical uses, which we later found out probably 5 or 10 years later. And I'm like, Bluetooth, I know Bluetooth. I coded that once. So again, just showing how old I am. But basically, if I wanted to continue in cybersecurity and CSE is when I really discovered this whole world of cryptography, which was combining mathematics with computer science in a real world way. I got very excited about it. And to have a career at CSE in that, you really needed a master's degree to get the good jobs. So when I went back to school that fall to finish my last year of undergrad, I went and talked to one of the professors, and he said, I said, I'm looking at grad school. What can I do? And he said, well, what are your grades? And I was like, well, like a 3.8 out of 4. And he said, I guess. And so I was kind of discouraged and I didn't really know. I was like, well, maybe I'll just start trying to find a job. I don't know. And then came Dr. Shelley Wismath. I love her to bits. And she's a professor in mathematics. And yes, her last name is Wismath. It's very cool. And she saw me in the hallway and asked me, Dinah, how come I haven't seen your NSERC application, which is a scholarship application through the Canadian government to get a secondary degree or grad school. And I said, well, I'm not really sure if I'm good enough to go to grad school. And she looked at me and said, Dinah, what are your grades? And I said, 3.8 out of 4. And she's like, clearly that is good enough. I would really like to see your applications. And so thanks to her giving me a bit of a push, I applied to a few schools and I got into my dream school, which was the University of Waterloo. While I was there, I was getting my master's in cryptography, which so cool, just so cool. And I was able to go to a conference one of the summers that I was there, and I met a whole bunch of people from BlackBerry who were in what they called the crypto dev team. So they were security software developers working on BlackBerries, which was a brand new thing. There was less than 1 million BlackBerry users at the time. Nobody really knew a lot about it. And so when I was trying to find a job, I had applied to a few roles there. I wasn't getting anywhere. And I ended up seeing one of their former co-op students who I had met at that conference, just like walking to school one day, and he asked me how I was. I said, well, I'm all right, but I'm trying to find a job and it's not really working. And he said, why don't you send me your resume and I'll pass it along to my boss? And that is how I got my dream job out of school, where I got to be a cybersecurity software developer for 8 years of my life. And it was amazing. And I got to ride the ride that was BlackBerry, with all of its fun and its disappointments, but it was really fun. And so my question is my story unique? Did other people find cybersecurity right away? Do other women find cybersecurity right away, really quickly? And my feeling was that it was no, that a lot of people found it in the same way that I found it. So I thought I would ask. And so I did this survey a couple years ago of about 50 women that I know that work in cybersecurity. And 75% of them said that cybersecurity was not their first career. And I think it's similar for the men, but I was really focused on, what is it like for women in cybersecurity with this report, but this was not surprising to me at all. There hadn't been a lot of, school programs that made it easy to get into cybersecurity. I think that's changing now, but it wasn't changing before. So then I wanted to know, okay, well, if cybersecurity is not your first career, what did you do before you started working in cybersecurity? And this was so eye-opening to me. Some of my favorite ones here are a chemist or somebody who was, actually I think my absolute favorite is a friend of mine who was a barista near my office. And for a whole year, I met a group of people at that cafe to plan a cybersecurity conference. And he was always there when we were doing that. And he got very interested in cybersecurity and then asked if he could help volunteer at our conference, which of course he could. And shortly after that, he asked if I would write a reference letter for him to go to the Toronto Metropolitan Rogers Cybersecurity program. And he actually works to this day. He went to that program. He did great. And he works as a cybersecurity engineer at Arctic Wolf. But I think that there's so many interesting ways that people can get into cybersecurity, and they can have done so many different jobs beforehand. And I think it's really cool to see that that's actually the case. So like if you're interested in problem solving and attention to detail, like cybersecurity could be great for you, and you could come from all kinds of different backgrounds. I want to talk about another example here. This is Danielle Kent. She got her PhD in chemistry in 1993 and then worked as a chemist for, the next 20 years basically. And saw the market for chemists kind of closing, like getting narrow. There wasn't a lot of places she could go. She's getting kind of bored with it. So she decided to go back to school. She had, heard some of the stuff that Robert Hergvac had said. He's a big person in cybersecurity. She had been reading some of his articles and stuff. She knew there was job opportunities, and she happened to come to the KW cybersecurity meetup that I ran for 7 years on a regular basis, and she got to really get a sense of what the cybersecurity community was all about in KW. And she got a job at Arctic Wolf in February of 2021. And one of the cool things I think about cybersecurity is it's a job where you can enter at entry level, so that triage security analyst, and very quickly, if you're good, move up the ranks. So today she's a concierge security engineer 3. That's, a very senior position at Arctic Wolf. But this is how quickly you can run through and start making, decent money and have a very fulfilling job. Another great example of this, of another person who got to security in a very, roundabout way, is Tawny. So Tawny has a BA in Communications and Management Studies from the University of Waterloo, and she was working at TextNow as a customer care specialist, and then started working with them on their legal project support and fraud analysis, and that got her interested in cybersecurity. And so in 2020, she applied to be a triage security analyst with Arctic Wolf. She got in, and she also quickly came up the ranks in cybersecurity. Like, if you're good, if you're dedicated. The other thing is, Arctic Wolf offers an amazing training program. So I worked there for a very long time. We're very aware that the industry was missing a lot of people. And so we would take in a lot of these like more entry-level people and then train them up inside, which I think is an extremely important way for companies to build their diversity, is being willing to take people with a little less experience and train them up. So one of the other questions I asked them was, how did you discover cybersecurity? Like, what happened? And my favorite answer for this is hacked. A number of people answered that they got hacked, and that got them interested in cybersecurity and doing it a little bit more. Other people found it in similar ways to me, like through school, through a job, that kind of thing. And I also asked them, okay, well, how did you build your skill set, right? So did you have formal education? Were you self-taught? Was it on-the-job learning? And it turns out it was a lot of these put together. And some people had all three. So another great question I asked was, did anyone help you along the way? And 76% said yes. So I had my person, Dr. Shelley Wismath, who really helped me along the way. Tawny had me helping her, as well as a good friend of mine, Lisa Tetro. And I have another great example here of a lovely lady who had people helping her. So this is Atifa Mashten. Many people call her Addie. And she has a bachelor's degree in mathematics from Carleton University. And then Addie and I got to share an office while we were doing our master's degrees together at the University of Waterloo. And while I exited after my master's degree, she did not, and completed her PhD. So all the power to her. And after that, she went and did a job as a scientific collaborator. But then in 2012, she was looking for a new challenge. She applied to a few different jobs, and one of them was with CIBC. And she had a friend who worked there, and that friend took her resume and put it in front of the hiring manager. Like, the HR department had already rejected her because they didn't know if, somebody with a PhD was going to be a good person to work there. But this friend of hers, like, talked to her, like, advocated for her and put her resume in front of her, and that helped. I also had that happen to me when I moved to another company, D2L, where I tried to apply online, and in the end, a friend of mine walked my resume over to the hiring manager's desk and just put it down. So, you know, we do need help from people. We aren't going to do this alone. Networking is important. And it was great to see that Addie was supported. She's now at Ryerson. I guess I should have fixed this. Ryerson's changed their name to Toronto Metropolitan. And she's faculty there, and she's founder and director of the Ryerson Cybersecurity Research Lab. She's also won some prestigious research chairs. So, and I love that I get to work with her as part of the Rogers Cybersecurity program as well. So I was starting to wonder, well, like, how many years have people been in security? Because, you know, when I started, it was definitely, there was very few women working in cybersecurity. But I thought, well, maybe this is starting to change. And so that's a question that I wanted to ask. And what's really exciting here is seeing the number of people in cybersecurity, 34% of them that have under 5 years experience. And when I did the survey 2 years ago, basically, like, there was 20% of the people surveyed were students who we would now assume are working in the industry. So if we take a look at this, over 50%, closer to 60% of all women working in cybersecurity today have been working there in the lab within the last 10 years. That's exciting. That's change. That is progress. And so that's really cool. And I thought, well, what do they do? Like, what kind of jobs do they hold on to during that time? And this infographic was really helpful for me in seeing, like, it really makes sense that if you have less than 5 years experience, you're in a more individual contributor style role, security analysis, technical writer, penetration testing, that kind of thing. And you move into that 5 to 10 year category, and you still see people in some individual contributor roles like incident response and consulting or the information security, but you're also starting to see some people move up into leadership like the C-suite. And then it's very similar for the 10 to 15 year group. I feel like there's a data problem there, but we'll let it go. And then in the 15 year plus category, then we have the C-suite, and it becomes more like software development and information security. Yeah. So the interesting part about, like, adding in the information security is that that's usually a higher level than, let's say, incident response. So over the years, those, you know, you move a little bit out of the individual contributor range and more into some of these higher level roles. So great. Okay. We know how women get into security. We know, you know, what kind of job roles they have by years of service, how they got there. But one question is, like, what is it like to actually be a woman in security today? And this is where I thought I would give you guys my experience. So when I was in university, when I went to the University of Lethbridge, there was 7-to-1 women to men at the university. It's weird that happened, but I guess the teaching component of it, and a lot more women get into teaching, or at least used to. And so my second year computer science course at a school where there is 7-to-1 women to men, I walked in to this class and saw 60 people and only one other woman. So I was one of 2 women in a second year level computer science course at a school where it was 7-to-1 women to men. That was eye-opening for me. That was absolutely eye-opening for me. It gave me an idea of what the industry was going to be like. When I got to BlackBerry, I was the only female software development person on my team, and I really tried to just be one of the guys. Like I was so scared that if I acted like a female, that maybe they wouldn't like me and they wouldn't promote me. And so I should just be one of the guys. And it was very naive of me, but I also didn't want to make waves. I just wanted to have a career. And that started to change over the years. But, at some point, BlackBerry started to not do so well. We all know that story. And I got headhunted out of BlackBerry to a new place that was also in cybersecurity. And this was the first time that I got headhunted out. It was like only my second real big job. And I didn't look where I was jumping very well. It turned out I had a very misogynistic boss. He was a bully. And within 9 months, my entire confidence was completely destroyed. And, I was the female manager and there was a male manager for the QA team. And the two of us were treated very differently. And that QA manager, said to me multiple times that this must be very hard for me. And so I decided to leave that awful environment and go on and try and find a job where I would be working in a better environment. And that's when I went to D2L. So I did leave security for a certain amount of time. I was looking for a place that was going to be healthier and more supportive. And it was great. But the security project still found me because I love security and that's just what happened. And I realized though, after being there for about 3 years that, I wasn't going to get promoted above senior manager, that there was a glass ceiling. I'd had a conversation with the CTO and I had told him that I would want to become a director. And he said, well, you might be a good junior director. Like as if that would ever get said to a man. So I realized maybe it was time to move on. If I wanted to level up to a director, I was going to need to leave that company. And that is when I found Arctic Wolf and where I had, my very first female boss. That was very exciting. And I was back in cybersecurity. And we had lots of fun there doing lots of amazing things. But, after my really bad experience at TrustWave, I had started blogging. And I thought, if I can't be real about what's happening with women in security, if I can't tell that story, then I don't want to work at that company anymore. And D2L was more than okay with me doing that. And in fact, I really was able to bring back my confidence at D2L. And I started some peer-to-peer groups for women, and I was blogging more. And so by the time I left there, I found that what if my voice, what would be more powerful than just my voice? And I thought, well, maybe that would be the voice of thousands of other women. And that led me to the creation of Code Like a Girl. It's an online publication who strives to change perceptions of women in technology. We have over 1,000 writers there now. And so that was one thing I felt like I could do. In October of 2020, while I was running the dev team at Arctic Wolf, I had built it from 15 people to about 150 at that time. We unicorned. What a great ride. What an amazing ride. But, it did still have some challenges, right? So many times in my career, I've had to be an only. I was one of 2 women in a 60-person CS classroom. I was the only female developer for a long time on my team at BlackBerry. I was the only female manager at TrustWave, and that felt very isolating. I was the only female senior manager at D2L for a long time. Again, also feeling isolated. Arctic Wolf was the first time, I've been in my career for 11 years, the first time I had a female above me in the chain of command. That was amazing. But I was still, for a long, long time, the only female director in the company, not just in R&D, but like in the company. And then I was the only female at VP level in the company, except for the HR person. And my boss had, my female boss had left at that time. And then I was the only woman in the C-level meetings. And, that was really difficult. There was meetings where like I was going over stuff and, my new boss, who was a man, was getting asked the questions, even though it was me who was the one who was the expert. And that's not uncommon. That is not uncommon. So what are we going to do about this? How are we going to fix this? How are we going to bring more women into cybersecurity, and how are we going to keep them there? Well, one of the ideas is that they can't continue to be the onlys. How do we get them out of being the onlys? So here's my commitment to alleviating the onlys. I continue to run Code Like a Girl. We're publishing articles every day. I'm a board member for the Rogers Cybersecurity Catalyst, amazing education program that is focused on graduating diverse cybersecurity professionals. They run an amazing 9 to 10 month program where basically when you come out of it, you have 2 CISSP certifications and you're ready to work. They had, in their first 3 years, over 60% diverse candidates. Amazing. So I'm going to continue to support them and work with them. I'm a mentor for their emerging leaders program. One of the biggest problems is no women in leadership. So we need to get more women up into leadership so that, it'll be easier for others to come from below. And the Rogers Cybersecurity Catalyst has an amazing emerging leaders program for women in leadership in cybersecurity. I'm a startup advisor for 2 female-led companies, and I mentor a lot of different women out there. So that's great. That's what I'm doing, but I'm only one person. So what about you? What can you do? So let's think about how you could build diversity at your company. How are you going to hire them? Big thing here is networking on LinkedIn with interviews you've had, meetups, conferences. Meet more people so that you can create a bigger network that may know more females interested in cybersecurity. Partner with underrepresented communities, right? So at Arctic Wolf, I had this amazing lady, Lisa Tetrout, who built out the cybersecurity engineering team. And she hired the most diverse team I've ever seen. And what she did was really work with, former military, with YSIS, with LGBTQ plus job fairs and communities, and all of the different types of groups, right? And then also with schools. So obviously Toronto Metropolitan for the Rogers Cybersecurity Catalyst, University of Waterloo, University of Toronto, but not just working with those schools, working with their women in computer science groups. I worked for many years with the University of Waterloo's like women in math and women in engineering groups to help bring that. And obviously I'm a little bit, Southern Ontario skewed here, but there's a lot of great programs across the world where you can bring more women in. You've got to play the long game. We have got to play the long game. And what does that mean? I was at an event for grade 9 girls, maybe 10 years ago, and I met this lovely lady named Maya Bishop. And I think she was actually in grade 12. She was there because her sister was there. And so, it's about 5 years ago. And her sister was there, and she was talking about how she was going to go to Waterloo the next year as a software engineer. And I said, "Oh, interesting. Would you like to be mentored? Would you like to talk to me?" And I was able to help her through her whole career, I was able to help her through university, figuring out and how to negotiate salaries. And very recently, all on her, really, she graduated as valedictorian and is now working for Bloomberg. So, this is really cool and important stuff, but the thing is, we have to work with the kids early, and we have to continue to support them all the way through. We have to play the long game on trying to get more women in cybersecurity and keeping them there. So how do we keep them, right? It's great. You got them into your company. You hired them. Perfect. How do you keep that? You got to build a bit more of an open and safe culture. And one thing that Arctic Wolf did was develop certification programs. So they're investing in everyone they hired to keep helping them move forward. And with the certification programs, there's very clear lines on what you need to do, what you need to achieve to move up. So it's easier to do that more objectively than it would be to do it like hiring your buddies and moving your buddies up, right? So with these more set expectations, right? You want to understand each team member's individual strengths, and you want to develop custom plans for them. You want to listen and develop solutions to problems that they're having. Like empathy is, I can't say empathy enough, honestly, to support the career. If you get diversity right, your measurement now is employee retention. Are you keeping that diversity and things? So here are some small things that I think can make a big difference. So you maybe aren't running the company, but you're working in a company. Redirect conversations back to women when they're interrupted. This happens all the time. Women get interrupted, and it's very easy for another person in the room to say, "Oh, Sally, I'm sorry, what were you saying again?" Before, Bob interrupted you. Advocate for them when they aren't in the room. If they've had great ideas and they've had great successes, advocate for that when they're not in the room. Redirect questions back to the female expert when the men in the room are asked instead. The man could be asked, and then you say, well, actually, I think, Judy might be the one who knows the answer to that because she's the expert. And then reattribute their ideas back to them. Sometimes, you may say something in a meeting, you have an idea, and no one really listened. And then 5 minutes later, the man in the room does say that same thing. And all of a sudden it's a great idea. If you're able to be that room, say something to the effect of, oh, excellent. You're reiterating Sally's idea. Wasn't it great? I agree with you. And do not make the woman in the room be the secretary. The way that I avoided this with my larger leadership meetings was to make the person who arrived last take notes. If you are the woman in the room and you constantly are being asked to take notes, stop bringing your laptop to the meeting and say, oh, I'm sorry, I can't take notes. I don't have my laptop. We are not the secretary just because we're the woman in the room. So here's some advice from some other women in security that I got through the surveys that I did. Always be learning. Persist, never get up. It's not going to be easy. It's easier than it was when I started, but there's still work to do. So gotta persist here. You are not an imposter, and you do not need to eat, sleep, breathe cyber 24/7. I do not know why people think that you have to do your job outside of your job. A great surgeon doesn't do surgeries outside of their job. They relax. So why should we expect that a software developer or a security expert does work outside of their job because they love it so much? That's just silly. So you want to build your network. A lot of the jobs that I got through my network. Attending meetups, conferences, and peer-to-peer groups is a great way to do that. And finding leaders that you're curious about and seek opportunities to learn and partner from them. Finding role models and mentors is great. You don't have to have one, okay? There's a lot out there. You can, read publications like Code Like a Girl and get so much from that. If you can, it's great, but it's not a requirement. It is helpful if you can. And then just focus on the impact you want to make. What are your goals? And when you focus on your goals and trying to achieve them, great things are going to happen. Thank you so much. You can find Code Like a Girl online and some of the other companies that I'm working with here. Thank you so much for having me. I've really enjoyed doing this talk today.